My wife drained our daughter's college fund and vanished with her 26-year-old lover. She left me a note which read, "This is payment for all the 30 years I chose to endure life with you. Now I am setting myself free." I was devastated. Then my daughter told me, "Dad, don't worry. I will handle this." 3 days later, what happened was rather unbelievable. I will tell you everything. First, let me quickly thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout out in our next story. Today's special shout out goes to Richard Gilmore from Scotland. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's go deeper into the story. I just come back from the grocery store. Nothing special, just the usual Saturday haul. The house was quiet, almost too quiet for a place that had once echoed with 30 years of shared life. I remember walking in, humming some half-forgotten tune from the radio, plastic bags biting into my fingers. The dog didn't bark. Linda didn't call out from the living room. No scent of coffee, no sound of the television running in the background. Just stillness. Heavy, unsettling stillness. I found the envelope on the kitchen counter, placed with such deliberate care it made my skin crawl. My name was written on the front in her neat handwriting. Always rounded, always perfectly spaced. I stared at it for a long time before opening it, like somehow my life wouldn't change if I just didn't look inside. But I did. Of course I did. Inside was the bank statement first. A cold piece of paper, one I'd seen 1,000 times, but this one was different. The college fund we'd spent 18 years building for our daughter Emily, gone. Every cent. The balance read, $0. My hand started to shake before I even pulled out the second slip, her wedding ring. And finally, the note. Just one sentence. "This wouldn't have happened if you had truly seen me. No, I'm sorry." No explanation. No goodbye. At first, I thought maybe she'd been robbed. Or hacked. But deep down I knew. That calm handwriting didn't belong to someone in distress. It belonged to someone with conviction. With a plan. Linda was gone. Not just gone, she had chosen to disappear. And she took everything that mattered on her way out. I sank into the kitchen chair and stared at the linoleum floor. That stupid yellow pattern she picked out 10 years ago, the one I always hated but never replaced because she liked it. It hit me then, how many compromises I'd made over the years. How many pieces of myself I'd quietly set aside so Linda could shine a little brighter. And still, in the end, she blamed me. I kept thinking of Emily. Our daughter, our pride. The reason we fought to stay together during the hardest years. She was starting her senior year of high school. The college visits, the scholarship essays, all of it had led up to that fund. And now it was gone. When Emily walked through the front door that afternoon, sun-kissed and sweaty from tennis practice, she noticed the silence too. "Dad," she called. Her voice was too cheerful for the storm she was about to walk into. I didn't know how to say it, but I knew I couldn't lie. So I handed her the envelope. She read it silently. No gasps. No tears. Just a long, unreadable stare. "She took it?" she asked finally. "Yes," I said, my throat dry. "She left this morning. I don't know where she is. And I don't know why, besides this." I handed her the note. She read it, scoffed, then set it down like it had no weight at all. "Dad, don't worry," she said, her voice lower now, steely. "I will handle this." I blinked at her. "Emily, you don't have to," she cut me off. I said I'll handle it. And just like that, she turned and walked upstairs, cool as marble. I heard her door shut quietly. I should have followed her. I should have asked what she meant, or how she planned to handle a woman who had just gutted us both. But instead, I sat there in stunned silence, staring at that empty bank balance like it might change if I blinked hard enough. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Linda's face at our wedding. Her promises. Her laughter. The way she used to put her cold feet on my legs under the covers and laugh when I flinched. I kept remembering all the Christmas mornings, the beach trips, the hospital waiting rooms where we stood together, hand in hand. And then I remembered the silence in that envelope. The way she blamed me without explanation. Like my love hadn't been enough. Like I'd failed at something I didn't even know was a test. But most of all, I couldn't stop thinking about Emily's face. The coldness. The certainty. It wasn't just anger. I knew anger. This was something else. And it scared me more than Linda's betrayal ever could. By the third day, I had resigned myself to the numb rhythm of waiting. I barely left the house, afraid of missing a call, an email, any signal that Linda might show some shred of decency and explain herself. But the silence was louder than any words. Emily, on the other hand, was in motion, focused, measured. She moved through the house with eerie precision, like she was preparing for something no one else understood. She wasn't crying. She wasn't venting. She wasn't even asking questions. She just acted. Her phone rarely left her hand. I caught glimpses, screenshots, messages, even a phone call where she spoke too softly for me to hear the other end. Once, I walked in as she hung up, and she looked at me like I was intruding on a sacred ritual. "I'm serious, Dad. Just give me a little time." I wanted to protest. I wanted to say this isn't your battle, but she already had her armor on, and whatever war she'd chosen, I was just a bystander now. I tried to go about my days, washing dishes, walking the dog, staring blankly at the ceiling when night came, but the unease twisted in my gut like wire. Then, late Sunday evening, the phone rang. I recognized the number instantly, hers, Linda's. For a second, I almost didn't answer, but my hand moved on its own, muscle memory from 3 decades of reaching for her voice. "Hello." There was a pause, then the sound of someone trying and failing to breathe through tears. Her sobs came like waves, desperate and messy. I'm so sorry," she choked out. "Please, you have to let me explain. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I wasn't thinking." He said things, and I believed them, and I need to come home. I didn't speak. I wasn't angry in that moment. I wasn't even confused. I was curious. "What did Emily say to you?" I asked calmly. More sobbing. Then silence. "Linda," I said, voice sharper now, "what exactly did our daughter say to make you call me after disappearing with her future?" She sniffled, and I could hear her trying to compose herself, but her voice still trembled like a loose floorboard. "She told me. She said she'd tell everyone. Everything. The emails. The affair. The money transfers. She knew about Jason, how he's married, how I lied about where I was those weekends. She said she had screenshots, that she talked to his wife." She broke again, ugly crying this time, full of guilt and panic. How did she know? How did she find out all of that? I didn't answer, because I didn't know. I was still trying to process that my daughter had unearthed secrets I hadn't even suspected. And not only that, she'd leveraged them. Efficiently. Silently. "In 3 days. I'll come back," Linda whimpered. "We'll talk. We'll fix it. I made a mistake, but it doesn't have to end like this. I still love you, okay? Please say something." But I couldn't say I love you back. The words stuck like gravel in my throat. "I'll think about it," I said instead. Then I hung up. I stood there in the kitchen, staring out the window, watching the porch light flicker like it always did when the wiring got wet. My heart wasn't racing. It wasn't even hurting. It was just stunned, like someone had knocked the wind out of me in slow motion. Emily came downstairs a few minutes later, holding a water bottle and wearing that same unreadable expression she'd worn since the day Linda vanished. "She called," I said. Emily didn't even blink. I figured she would. "What exactly did you do?" I asked. She took a slow sip of water, then met my gaze with unnerving calm. "I reminded her that actions have consequences," she said. And I made sure she knew what those consequences would look like. I should have been more alarmed. I should have asked more questions. But part of me, deep down, was proud. Terrified, but proud. "You didn't have to get involved," I said, softer now. "Yes," she replied. "I did." And then she walked past me, up the stairs, as if she hadn't just pulled a ghost out of hiding. The next day, Linda showed up in person. No luggage. No dramatic entrance. Just her standing at the door with puffy eyes and trembling lips. But this wasn't a reunion. It was the beginning of something much darker. And none of us were ready for how it would unfold. She showed up on a Monday afternoon, just after I'd returned from the bank to freeze what little was left of our joint accounts. I was taking out the trash when I saw her standing by the mailbox in a long gray coat, arms wrapped tightly around herself like she'd just stepped out of a funeral. Her hair was damp, frizzy at the ends, nothing like the polished, rehearsed woman who used to leave the house in heels and lipstick for her therapy sessions. For a full minute, we just stared at each other. 30 years collapsed into that silence. Wedding vows, Christmas mornings, the nights spent arguing over bills or curfews or who left the damn stove on. All of it sat heavy between us. She didn't step forward. She waited for me to come to her, and I didn't. Not this time. "You're not staying?" I said finally. "I just want to talk," she murmured, her voice so hoarse it was barely audible. So I let her in, because part of me still needed to look her in the face and ask why. She sat on the edge of the couch like she didn't recognize it anymore, her hands clasped so tightly they'd turned red. I didn't offer her water. I didn't ask if she'd eaten. I sat across from her, my arms folded, and waited for the truth. "I don't even know where to start," she whispered. "Start with the truth," I said. She nodded slowly. "It wasn't just Jason. There were others. Not affairs, nothing that lasted. But moments. Conversations. Secrets. And I hated myself every time, but I kept doing it. Because you stopped looking at me like I was a woman. I felt invisible. I looked at you like you were my wife," I snapped. "The woman I trusted. The woman I built a life with. I didn't stop seeing you. I just didn't see this coming." Her eyes welled with tears, but I wasn't moved. "Not anymore. Not after what she'd done to our daughter. I made a mistake," she said, voice shaking. "I was going to pay the money back. Jason said he'd help me double it in crypto, and when it all blew up, he ghosted. That's when Emily contacted me. She knew everything. Everything." I leaned forward. "What did she have on you?" Linda stared at the floor. "She found the emails, the hotel receipts, even the burner account I used to send money from the college fund to Jason's business. She emailed Jason's wife. She said if I didn't call you and tell the truth, she'd go public. She had screenshots of me writing to Jason things like, 'He's so boring. I feel like a ghost in my own house.' The words landed like glass in my chest. I never meant them," she added quickly. "I was angry. Stupid. I was trying to feel something again." I stood up. I couldn't sit through another excuse. "She's 18, I said coldly. "And she had to become your reckoning." "She's not 18 yet," she whispered, almost defensively. I turned sharply. "So what? That makes it better? You took her future, then hid behind your midlife crisis. And now you're scared of your own daughter because she was smarter than you expected." Just then, Emily walked in. She was still in her school clothes, earbuds in, and paused when she saw her mother sitting there. "Oh, you're back," she said, her tone more bored than anything else. Linda stood too quickly. "Emily, honey." "Don't," Emily said flatly. "Don't honey me. You don't get to pretend this is normal." The tension snapped in that moment. Linda reached out as if to grab her daughter's hand, but Emily backed away like it burned. "I didn't know what I was doing," Linda whispered, on the verge of tears again. "Then you shouldn't have done it," Emily replied. "And for the record, I didn't threaten you. I gave you a choice. Lie and I ruin you. Or tell the truth and maybe, you salvage a little of your dignity." Linda's lip trembled. "I'm still your mother. Only biologically," Emily said. And with that, she walked upstairs without another word. The sound of her door closing was final. Linda collapsed onto the couch and wept into her hands. I wanted to feel sorry for her, but all I could feel was this slow, steady exhale of relief. Not because things were fixed, they weren't. But because, for the first time, the power had shifted. She could cry all she wanted. The damage was done, and now she had to live with it. The invitation came 2 weeks after Linda's return, not from her, of course, but from my sister, Claire. It was her 50th birthday, and she was throwing one of those backyard get-togethers she loved. Cheap wine, mismatched chairs, a dozen family members, and a Bluetooth speaker pumping out 80s hits like time hadn't passed since we were kids. Emily wanted to skip it. "You know people are going to stare," she warned, arms folded tight across her chest. "I know," I said. "But this isn't about your mother. This is about Aunt Claire." She hesitated, then sighed. "Fine. But if she tries to play victim again, I swear to God, I won't let it get that far," I promised. I meant it, too. Though deep down, I knew things were never that simple when blood and betrayal shared the same table. Linda hadn't been invited, but she asked to come. I just want to show face, she said, almost like she was owed the right. Let people see I'm not hiding. I almost laughed. You think you're not hiding? You've been holed up in the guest room like a fugitive. She flinched, but didn't argue. That's how she was now, deflated. Smaller. And maybe that was what made me say yes. Not forgiveness, not sympathy, just curiosity. I wanted to see what would happen when she stepped into the wreckage she created. The party was already buzzing when we arrived. Claire had strung up lights across the fence and filled the tables with old photos, mason jars of lemonade, and trays of meatballs that never stayed warm. The smell of charcoal, beer, and perfume drifted through the yard. It should have felt familiar. But as soon as we stepped in, the air shifted. People noticed Linda instantly. Conversations stuttered, then resumed in that forced, polite cadence reserved for family scandals. No one said anything outright, but the looks were loud enough. Emily kept close to me, her eyes scanning every face like a soldier on patrol. Claire came over and gave me a long, tight hug. She's got some nerve showing up, she whispered, then pulled back with a smile so wide it nearly split her face. But hey, this should be fun. I chuckled, but it came out hollow. Dinner was served buffet style, and we all made our way to the tables in the backyard. Linda sat 2 seats away from me, next to Claire's husband, who tried to make small talk about football while pointedly avoiding eye contact. Emily sat across from her, silent and unreadable. Then Linda spoke. I just want to say, I know I haven't exactly been around lately, but I'm really glad to be here. With family. Claire snorted softly. It was small, but everyone heard it. Linda turned slightly pink. I've made mistakes, she continued, her voice thin. But I've also learned a lot. I was going through something, menopause, depression, identity stuff. I didn't handle it right. But I'm trying now. That's when Emily put her fork down. Slowly. Deliberately. Funny, she said, her voice clear and steady. You didn't mention stealing my college fund. Or sleeping with a married man while pretending you were at therapy. Silence. Someone near the end of the table coughed awkwardly. Claire raised an eyebrow. A phone was lifted, someone recording. Of course they were. Linda looked like she'd been slapped. Emily, this isn't the place. No. Emily said, cutting her off. You don't get to pick the place. You picked your place when you disappeared with my future and left Dad to clean up your mess. Claire leaned in. Wait, you took the college fund. Linda's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. I saw the cracks forming, the way her hands trembled as she tried to grab the narrative back. I was going to return it, she whispered. To what? Emily shot back. A crypto scam? A fantasy life with someone else's husband. Linda stood abruptly, her chair screeching against the deck. This is not how I wanted tonight to go. Well, Claire said, her voice hard now. Maybe you should have thought of that before you played your daughter like an ATM. The damage was done. The rest of the dinner unraveled fast. Someone walked out. Someone else whispered something about never trusting her again. And Linda stood frozen, like she couldn't believe it had all come out. Like this wasn't the consequence of her own undoing. We left early. Emily didn't say much on the way home, just scrolled through her phone while I drove in silence. When we got back, she showed me the video. It had already been uploaded. The caption read, "When your mom shows up to family dinner like nothing happened." The comments were brutal. The internet didn't need context. It just needed blood. I looked at my daughter, stunned. You posted this? No, she said calmly. Cousin Beth did. I just made sure the truth was loud enough to follow her home. And that was the moment I realized something terrifying and beautiful all at once. Our daughter hadn't just survived the betrayal. She'd weaponized it. Linda didn't speak to me for 3 days after the dinner. Not a word. She stayed in the guest room, curtains drawn, phone face down, moving around the house like a ghost trying not to wake the living. I didn't push her, not because I was being kind, but because silence had become my weapon, too. I kept my routine tight. Woke up early, made breakfast for Emily, drove her to school, even though she could have taken the bus. I cleaned, took long walks, spent too much time in the garage, pretending I had things to fix. I wasn't hiding from Linda. I was preparing. It was the sound of the blender that finally broke the standoff. I was making a protein shake when I heard her behind me, barefoot, arms crossed. She looked thinner, hollowed out. Her eyes were rimmed red, and her once perfect posture had crumbled into a permanent slouch. I want to talk, she said. I turned off the blender and leaned against the counter. Go ahead. She hesitated. I know you're still angry, but you need to understand, I was unhappy for a long time. Then you should have said something, I replied flatly. I did, she snapped. You just didn't listen. I clenched my jaw. No. What you did was drop hints and sulk. You didn't talk. You accused. And then, when you didn't get what you wanted, you robbed our daughter and disappeared. She flinched at the word robbed, but didn't deny it. I wanted to feel alive again, she said. And Jason, he made me feel seen. I stared at her. You think I didn't want that too? You think I didn't wonder who I was anymore after 30 years of raising a family, working dead-end jobs, paying bills? I gave you everything I had, and when I had nothing left, you blamed me for it. Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't stop. Tell me the truth, I said. All of it. What else don't I know? She wiped her face with her sleeve. I lied about therapy. I lied about those girls' weekends. It wasn't just Jason. I met men online. Sometimes it was emotional, sometimes not. It gave me control, power. I didn't feel like your wife anymore. I felt like a ghost in my own life. Like I was just filling space. And Emily? I asked. Did she mean that little to you? No, she whispered. She was never supposed to find out. I thought I had time to fix it before anyone knew. But she did know, I said. And she cleaned up the mess you left like it was second nature. That should scare you. She sat down at the table and buried her face in her hands. She said she had screenshots, that she knew about Jason's wife, that she'd make everything public unless I called you and told the truth. I didn't believe her at first until she read me back one of my private emails. Word for word. I didn't even remember writing it. I nodded. She's her mother's daughter in the sharpest way, but she's mine when it counts. That hit her. Hard. She looked up, mascara smudged from tears, and said something I never thought I'd hear from her mouth. Do you want me to leave? I stared at her. The question wasn't born from guilt. It was survival. She was still calculating, still trying to guess what would keep her safe. Yes, I said simply. I do. Her lips parted like she was going to argue, but she saw something in my face, something final, and swallowed it. I don't have anywhere to go, she murmured. Not my problem, I said. She nodded slowly, stood, and went back to the guest room. That night, she packed. I didn't offer help. Emily didn't say a word to her. And when she walked out the door with 2 suitcases and no goodbye, it felt less like a breakup and more like an exorcism. The next morning, I sat on the porch with my coffee, watching the sun rise over a house that finally felt like mine again. Emily joined me, still in pajamas, hair tied back, sipping from her own mug. She's gone? She asked. I nodded. Good, she said, leaning back. Now we can breathe. After Linda left, the silence in the house changed. It wasn't heavy anymore. It was clean. It was the kind of quiet that let you breathe deeper. The kind you don't realize you missed until the static is finally gone. I expected to feel sadness, or at least some hollow sense of loss. But what I felt instead was something I hadn't known I needed. Peace. For weeks, Emily and I fell into a new rhythm. Nothing fancy. Just 2 people living, healing. She cooked more. I did the dishes. We didn't talk about her mother unless it came up naturally. And even then, it was in small pieces. Like when she found an old sweater in the laundry and tossed it in the donate pile without blinking. Or when she opened the mail, saw Linda's name on a stray credit card offer, and muttered, "Wrong house." One night, I was sitting at the kitchen table sorting through paperwork when she slid a thick manila folder in front of me. I looked at her, puzzled. "What's this?" "My insurance," she said. "Screenshots. Emails. Account transfers. I didn't want to tell you until it was over. I wasn't sure how far I'd have to go." I opened it and felt my stomach turn. Emails between Linda and Jason, full of explicit promises and schemes. Transfer receipts showing thousands being funneled from the college account into a shell LLC Jason ran out of Florida. Private messages where Linda described our marriage as a slow emotional death. I closed the folder. Jesus, M. She shrugged. I only used what I had to. Just enough to make her scared enough to do the right thing. "You shouldn't have had to carry that," I said. That wasn't your job. Her eyes met mine. She made it my job. She made me choose between silence and justice. I nodded slowly. She was right. And even though it twisted something inside me to admit that my daughter had been forced into that role, I also couldn't deny how damn proud I was of her. She hadn't just stood up for herself, she'd protected us both. When I'd been drowning in grief and denial, she'd gone straight for the jugular. You know, I said, for years, I thought I was raising a daughter who needed me to protect her. Turns out I was raising the woman who would protect me. Emily smiled softly. I learned from you. Maybe not the loud parts, but the steady ones. We sat there in silence for a while. No music, no TV, just the clink of ice in her glass and the distant hum of a world that had finally stopped spinning out of control. Eventually, I asked, do you think she'll try to come back? Emily took a sip of water, then shook her head. Not after what I told Jason's wife. That ship is burned. She's on her own now. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. Linda was gone, not just physically, but in every way that counted. Whatever redemption she might find would be hers to chase elsewhere. Not here. Not with us. A few days later, I got an email from her. A long, meandering apology. She talked about therapy, about wanting to rebuild trust, about someday sitting down as a family again. I didn't reply. I archived it, and then I went outside and trimmed the hedges. Because life goes on. Because some things don't deserve closure. Because sometimes the most powerful answer is nothing at all. And as I stood on the porch that night, watching Emily laugh on the phone with her friends, her voice bright and free, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect us end up being the ones we have to protect ourselves from. This story isn't just about betrayal. It's about strength, boundaries, and what happens when love isn't enough to excuse the damage. If you've ever had to choose peace over family, or found out your child was stronger than you ever knew, tell us in the comments. Let's talk about what real loyalty looks like when everything falls apart. See you soon in the next story.